There is a spice sitting in your kitchen cabinet right now that researchers have been studying for over 30 years for its effect on blood sugar. Not a drug, not a supplement, not something you have to order online, something you probably already own. And yet millions of people with high blood sugar, prediabetes, and type 2 diabetes have absolutely no idea this exists as a tool. Here's what's fascinating. The mechanism behind this ingredient works at the cellular level, at the actual receptor that lets sugar into your cells. And when that mechanism is broken, it doesn't matter how little sugar you eat. Your body still can't process it correctly. By the end of this video, I'm going to show you exactly what this ingredient is, why it works, how to use it the right way, and the one mistake that makes it completely useless, maybe even harmful. Now, I know what you're thinking. Is this apple cider vinegar? It's not. Although that's a good one too. This one is different, and the data behind it genuinely surprised me. Let's get into it. Here's what the conventional approach to high blood sugar looks like. Watch your carbs. Take your medication. Check your A1C every 3 months. Come back and see me in 90 days. That's the plan. For millions of people, that is the entire plan. And look, I'm not here to tell you that medication is evil or that your doctor is wrong. That's not what this is about. But here's what I want you to understand. That approach treats the number. It does not fix the mechanism. There is a difference, a massive difference. Think about it this way. If your basement is flooding, you have 2 options. You grab a mop and start cleaning up the water, or you go find the broken pipe and fix it. Conventional blood sugar management is mostly mopping. Very effective mopping, sometimes, but the pipe is still broken. Now, what is the broken pipe? It's called insulin resistance. And here is where most people, including a lot of people in the medical system, have the wrong mental model. Most people think high blood sugar is a sugar problem. It is not. High blood sugar is an insulin problem. Let me explain what I mean. When you eat carbohydrates, your blood sugar rises. Your pancreas releases insulin. Insulin's job is to knock on the door of your cells and say, hey, open up, let this sugar in, store it, use it for energy. That's normal. That's how it's supposed to work. But in insulin resistance, the cell stops answering the door. The insulin is there. The signal is there. But the receptor on the cell wall, the lock, is jammed, so the sugar stays in the blood. And your pancreas panics and sends more insulin. And the cell ignores that too. And the cycle keeps going. Did you realize that over 96 million Americans are currently in a pre-diabetic state? That is nearly 1 in 3 adults. And according to the CDC, more than 80% of them have no idea. That is not a sugar problem. That is a signaling problem, a cellular communication problem. And here is what's fascinating. There is a compound found in a common kitchen spice that researchers have shown can directly interact with that jammed receptor, not mask the symptom, not just lower the number temporarily, actually help resensitize the cell to insulin. Researchers at the USDA have been looking at this since the early 1990s. The data has been published. The mechanism is understood. And yet, nobody is talking about it. That changes right now. The ingredient is cinnamon. Now, before you click away, stay with me, because I know what you're thinking. Cinnamon? That's it? That's the big reveal? Here's the thing. Most people hear cinnamon and they think of a flavor, a spice you put on oatmeal, something that makes your house smell good in November. What they don't know is the biochemistry behind it. And once you understand the mechanism, actually understand it, you will never look at this spice the same way again. So let's go layer by layer. Layer 1, the jammed lock. I told you in the last section that insulin resistance is essentially a jammed lock. The insulin key is there, but the receptor on the cell wall won't respond. Cinnamon contains a group of compounds called methyl hydroxychalcone polymers. Now, what is that in plain English? These are molecules that directly activate something called GLUT4 transporter proteins. Now, what the heck is a GLUT4 transporter? Think of it like a loading dock on the surface of your cell. When insulin signals correctly, the GLUT4 transporter opens up and lets glucose move from your blood into the cell. That's how energy gets in. In insulin resistance, those loading docks are inactive. They're closed. Glucose piles up in the blood because there's nowhere for it to go. What cinnamon does, and this is the part that genuinely fascinated me, is it activates those GLUT4 transporters through a separate pathway. It essentially bypasses the jam signal and opens the loading dock anyway. It's not replacing insulin. It's not mimicking insulin exactly. It's working on the same downstream target through a different door. Pretty wild. Layer 2, the liver. Most people only think about the pancreas when they think about blood sugar. The pancreas makes insulin. Insulin controls sugar. End of story. But there's another organ in this equation that almost nobody talks about. Your liver. Here's what your liver is supposed to do. After a meal, when blood sugar is high, your liver takes excess glucose and converts it into glycogen, a stored form of sugar, and holds onto it for later, like a warehouse. It stores the overflow so it doesn't stay in your blood. But here's what happens in a lot of people, and this is more common than you think. The liver becomes congested, fatty, overloaded. And when that happens, it stops storing glucose properly. Worse than that, it starts releasing glucose back into the bloodstream even when blood sugar is already high. That is like a warehouse that not only refuses to accept new inventory, but starts dumping its old inventory onto the street at the worst possible time. Cinnamon has been shown to directly stimulate glycogen synthesis in liver cells. In other words, it helps the warehouse remember its job. Store the sugar. Don't dump it back out. There is a study out of the University of California that demonstrated this effect directly on liver cell cultures. The compounds in cinnamon activated the same glycogen-storing enzymes that insulin is supposed to activate. Same result. Different trigger. Layer 3. Gastric emptying. This one surprised me when I first came across it. Here's the problem with most meals, especially in the modern diet. You eat something with carbohydrates. Your stomach processes it very quickly. That glucose hits your small intestine fast, gets absorbed fast, and your blood sugar spikes fast. That spike is the problem. Not just the total amount of sugar, the speed of the spike. A fast spike means a large insulin response. A large insulin response, repeated over time, is what drives insulin resistance deeper. Now here's what cinnamon does that almost no one is talking about. It slows gastric emptying. Now what does that mean? It means cinnamon slows the rate at which your stomach releases its contents into the small intestine. Think of it like a traffic regulator at a highway on-ramp. Instead of letting every car merge at once and causing a pileup, which is your blood sugar spike, it spaces the cars out, one at a time, smooth, controlled. The glucose still gets absorbed, but it gets absorbed gradually. The spike is flattened. The insulin response is smaller. The stress on your cells is reduced. A study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition showed that adding cinnamon to a meal significantly reduced the glycemic response compared to the same meal without it. Same food, same calories, completely different blood sugar curve. That is the mechanism. That is why this works. Layer 4, the inflammation connection. And then there is one more layer here that ties everything together. Insulin resistance is not just a mechanical problem, it is also an inflammatory problem. Chronic low-grade inflammation. And most people with high blood sugar have it. Directly interferes with insulin receptor signaling. The inflammation essentially coats the receptor, makes it even harder for the insulin signal to get through. Cinnamon, specifically its active compound cinnamaldehyde, has been shown in multiple studies to suppress NF-κB. Now what is NF-κB? It is basically the master switch for inflammatory signaling in your body. When NF-κB is overactive, inflammation runs hot, like a gas pedal stuck down. Cinnamaldehyde helps ease off that gas pedal. So what you have is a compound that works on 4 separate mechanisms simultaneously: the cell receptor, the liver, the speed of glucose absorption, and the inflammatory environment that makes all of the above worse. That is not a flavoring agent. That is a pharmacologically active compound that happens to taste good in your coffee. And we have not even talked about the studies yet. Now let's talk about the data, because I don't want you to take my word for any of this. Let's look at the actual research, the study that started everything. In 2003, a research team led by Dr. Alam Khan at the USDA Human Nutrition Research Center published a landmark study in the journal Diabetes Care. 60 patients, all diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, all on conventional medication, divided into 6 groups. 3 groups received cinnamon, 1 gram, 3 grams, or 6 grams per day. The other 3 groups received a placebo. 40 days later, here are the numbers. The group taking just 1 gram of cinnamon per day, that is less than half a teaspoon, reduced their fasting blood glucose by 18%. The 3-gram group reduced it by 19%. The 6-gram group reduced it by 29%, not 2%, not 5%. 18 to 29% reduction in fasting blood sugar in 40 days with cinnamon. And here is what gets me every time I look at this study. It was published in 2003. It has been sitting there for over 20 years, peer-reviewed, in one of the most respected diabetes journals in the world. Of course, nobody prescribes it. The meta-analysis that confirmed it. Now, one study is interesting, but a meta-analysis, a study of studies, that is where you start to see the real pattern. In 2013, researchers published a meta-analysis in the Annals of Family Medicine, 10 randomized controlled trials, over 540 patients total. The conclusion? Cinnamon supplementation was associated with a statistically significant reduction in fasting blood glucose of approximately 25 milligrams per deciliter, and a reduction in total cholesterol, and a reduction in LDL and triglycerides. So it is not just blood sugar. The metabolic picture improves across the board. Did you realize that? One ingredient, multiple metabolic markers, all moving in the right direction simultaneously. The A1C data. Now I know what some of you are thinking. Fasting glucose is one thing, but what about A1C? That is the 3-month average. That is the number your doctor actually watches. A 2019 review published in the Journal of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics looked specifically at A1C response to cinnamon supplementation across multiple trials. The average reduction, 0.36% in A1C. Now that might sound small, but consider this. Metformin, the most commonly prescribed diabetes drug on the planet, produces an average A1C reduction of between 1 and 2% in most patients. Cinnamon gets you roughly a third of that, with no prescription, no side effects at normal doses, and for about $8 a bottle. I am not telling you to throw away your metformin. That is between you and your doctor. But am I telling you that adding cinnamon to your protocol is supported by clinical evidence? Absolutely yes. Not even close to a debate. Ceylon VZs, Cassia, the critical difference. Now here's where I need to stop and be very direct with you, because this is the mistake that makes cinnamon either therapeutic or potentially harmful. There are two main types of cinnamon available commercially. Cassia cinnamon. That is the one in almost every grocery store in America. The one in your cabinet right now, most likely. It is darker, stronger, flavored, cheaper to produce. And then there is Ceylon cinnamon, sometimes called true cinnamon, Cinnamomum verum. Lighter color, more delicate flavor, slightly more expensive. Here's the critical difference. Cassia cinnamon contains high levels of a compound called coumarin. Now what is coumarin? It is a naturally occurring chemical that in high doses is toxic to the liver. The European Food Safety Authority has actually set a tolerable daily intake limit specifically because of cassia coumarin content. At culinary amounts, a pinch here, a dash there. Cassia is completely fine. It is not going to hurt you. But if you are using cinnamon therapeutically, meaning 1 to 2 teaspoons per day over 30 days or more, cassia coumarin levels become a real concern. Ceylon cinnamon contains almost no coumarin, virtually undetectable levels. It is the form used in most of the clinical studies showing benefit. So if you compare cassia to Ceylon for daily therapeutic use, cassia gives you a real coumarin exposure risk. Ceylon gives you virtually zero. Same blood sugar benefit. Completely different safety profile. This is not a minor detail. This is the detail that determines whether cinnamon works for you or works against you. The cost comparison. A 1-month supply of metformin without insurance? Somewhere between $15 and $50, depending on your pharmacy. A 4-month supply of Ceylon cinnamon, approximately $8 to $12 on Amazon. Now I want to be precise here. I am not making a clinical equivalence argument. These are different tools with different mechanisms and different levels of evidence. But the idea that a compound with 30 years of published research, multiple randomized controlled trials, and a known cellular mechanism is not even mentioned in most diabetes management conversations? That is ridiculous. Utterly ridiculous. The data is there. It has always been there. Now let's talk about what to actually do with it. All right, let's get practical. Because information without application is just entertainment. Here is exactly what to do, step by step. No ambiguity. Step 1, get the right cinnamon. This is non-negotiable. Go to your cabinet right now and look at what you have. If it just says cinnamon, it is almost certainly cassia. If it says Cinnamomum cassia or Cinnamomum aromaticum on the label, that is cassia. What you want is Ceylon cinnamon, also labeled as Cinnamomum verum or sometimes true cinnamon. You can find it at most health food stores or on Amazon. It is slightly more expensive than cassia. We're talking maybe $2 or $3 more per bottle. That $2 difference matters. Do not skip this step. Step 2. Start with the right dose. The clinical studies showing meaningful blood sugar reduction used between 1 and 6 grams per day. In practical terms, that is between half a teaspoon and 2 teaspoons. Start at 1 teaspoon per day. That is your baseline, your entry point. Do not start at 6 grams thinking more is better. That is not how this works. Give your cells time to respond. Start low, stay consistent, and assess after 30 days. If after 2 weeks you feel good and you want to increase, go to 1.5 teaspoons. 2 teaspoons is the practical ceiling for daily use. Beyond that, you are not getting meaningfully more benefit, and you are just going through your supply faster. Step 3, time it correctly. This is where most people leave results on the table. They take cinnamon randomly with a glass of water before bed, or sprinkled on something in the afternoon with no carbohydrates present. That is not how to maximize the mechanism. Remember layer 3 from the mechanism section. Cinnamon slows gastric emptying and flattens the glucose curve. That effect only works if cinnamon is present when carbohydrates are being digested. So the rule is simple. Take your cinnamon with your highest carbohydrate meal of the day. Or better yet, split it. Half a teaspoon with your first meal. Half a teaspoon with your largest meal. The goal is to have cinnamon in your digestive system at the exact moment glucose is entering your bloodstream. That is when the mechanism fires. Step 4, the coffee protocol. Now here's the simplest way to make this a daily habit that actually sticks. And this is the method I personally find most practical. Add 1 teaspoon of Ceylon cinnamon directly to your coffee grounds before brewing, not after, before. The hot water extracts the active compounds during brewing and distributes them evenly through the cup. Black coffee, no sugar, no sweetened creamers. If you are adding cinnamon to a caramel macchiato with 3 pumps of syrup, you are not fixing the problem. You are creating it. The coffee itself, by the way, has its own insulin sensitizing properties. You are stacking 2 mechanisms in the same cup. That is a good morning. Step 5, the mistakes that make this useless. Mistake number 1, using cassia in therapeutic doses. I already covered this. Ceylon only for daily use. Mistake number 2, expecting results in 3 days. I hear this constantly. People try something for a week, see no dramatic change, and conclude it does not work. That is not how cellular resensitization works. Your insulin receptors did not get jammed overnight. They are not going to unjam overnight either. The studies showing significant results ran for 40 days minimum. Give this 30 days of consistent daily use before you evaluate. 30 days, not 3. Mistake number 3, using cinnamon as a license to eat more sugar. This is a tool to support a system that is already moving in the right direction. It is not a neutralizer. You cannot pour cinnamon on a donut and call it medicine. The dietary foundation still matters. Mistake number 4, taking it inconsistently. 1 day on, 3 days off, forget for a week, double up on the weekend. That is not a protocol. Consistency is the entire point. Same dose, same timing, every single day. Step 6, stack it intelligently. If you want to accelerate the results, and I mean significantly accelerate, combine this protocol with 2 things. First, a 16 to 18 hour intermittent fasting window. When your insulin levels are low for an extended period, your cells begin to resensitize naturally. You are removing the constant insulin stimulus that keeps the receptors overloaded. Cinnamon plus fasting is a genuinely powerful combination. Second, reduce refined carbohydrates, not eliminate. Reduce. White bread, white rice, pasta, sugary drinks. These are the foods that spike glucose fastest and hardest. You do not have to go full ketogenic, although that is a conversation for another video. But reducing your refined carb load gives cinnamon a much easier job to do. Think of it this way. Cinnamon is a very effective tool for managing a moderate glucose load. It is a much less effective tool for managing a catastrophic glucose load. Work with it, not against it. Try this for 30 days. Consistent dose. Right type. Right timing. Come back and tell me your fasting glucose numbers before and after. Prove it to yourself. All right, let's bring this together. Here's what we covered today. High blood sugar is not a sugar problem. It is an insulin signaling problem, a jammed lock. And treating the number without fixing the mechanism is just mopping the floor while the pipe is still broken. Cinnamon, specifically Ceylon cinnamon, contains compounds that work on 4 separate mechanisms simultaneously: the cell receptor, the liver, the speed of glucose absorption, and the inflammatory environment that makes all of it worse. The research is not new. It is not fringe. It has been published in peer-reviewed journals for over 20 years. A 2003 USDA-backed clinical trial. A 2013 meta-analysis of 10 randomized controlled trials. The data is there, and the protocol is simple. 1 teaspoon of Ceylon cinnamon per day, with your highest carbohydrate meal, or added directly to your morning coffee before brewing. Consistent, every day, for 30 days minimum. That is it. No prescription, no expensive intervention, no complicated system, just a spice that has been sitting in your cabinet, or should be sitting in your cabinet, with 30 years of published science behind it. Now I want to hear from you. If you already use cinnamon and you have noticed a difference, tell me in the comments. If you are going to try this protocol starting today, tell me that too. Come back in 30 days and give me your numbers. Fasting glucose before, fasting glucose after. I read these comments. Every single one. This community is one of the most informed groups of people on the internet when it comes to taking their health seriously. And that matters. Because when you understand the mechanism, when you actually know why something works, you stop being a passive patient and you start being an active participant in your own health. That is the whole point of everything I do here. If you enjoyed the content, leave a like and take this opportunity to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'm Andrew Collins, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.